The opening of the nearly $6.5 billion bridge, funded entirely by Canada, is under threat tonight. Donald Trump declaring on social media he will try to block the opening of the Gordie Howe International Bridge.
U.S. President Donald Trump is threatening to block the opening of a new bridge linking Windsor, Ontario and Detroit, Michigan. It's the Gordie Howe Bridge that's supposed to open later this year.
Well, the U.S. president is once again taking aim at Canada, this time threatening to block the opening of a new major trade corridor between Windsor and Detroit.
The $64 billion bridge, 8,000 trucks a day. A corridor carrying a quarter of all merchandise trade between Canada and the United States. In a social media post published on a Monday night in February that threatened to shut the whole thing down before a single vehicle ever crossed it, you are watching Global Sketch if you want the sharpest, most data-verified breakdown of the Gordie Howe International Bridge standoff, including the lobbying money, the ownership facts, and what blocking this bridge would actually cost Michigan. Subscribe right now, because the real story behind this dispute is far more specific, far more documented, and far more damaging to one side than the headlines suggest. Let us start with the physical reality of what is being discussed, because the scale of this project is important to understanding why the political fight around it is so significant. Gordie Howe International Bridge is a cable-stayed crossing spanning 15 miles across the Detroit River between Windsor, Ontario and Detroit, Michigan. Its main span of 853 meters is the longest cable-stayed span in North America and ranks among the 5 longest such bridges on the entire continent. Its towers are designed to resemble a hockey stick in mid-slap shot, a structural tribute to the bridge's namesake, Gordie Howe, the Canadian hockey legend who played 25 seasons for the Detroit Red Wings and who is beloved in both cities. Bridge features 6 lanes of vehicular traffic, a dedicated pedestrian and cyclist pathway, and full port of entry customs facilities on both sides. Its critical infrastructure innovation is its highway connections. Unlike the existing Ambassador Bridge built in 1929, which feeds into Windsor City streets and forces commercial trucks through traffic lights before reaching the highway, the Gordie Howe Bridge connects directly to Ontario Highway 401 and Michigan's Interstate 75. That freeway-to-freeway link is not a minor convenience, it is the primary economic rationale for the entire project. The University of Windsor study estimated it could save commercial transit time of up to 20 minutes per trip in over 30 years. That efficiency compounds into approximately $23 billion in savings for trucking companies and the industries they serve. Groundbreaking took place in 2018 as of April 22, 2026, 3 weeks ago. The Windsor-Detroit Bridge Authority confirmed that opening is still anticipated in spring 2026, with testing and commissioning ongoing in February 9, 2026. President Trump posted on Truth Social that Canada owned the bridge on both sides, and that the United States needed to be compensated before he would allow it to open. He wrote, and this is a direct quote, "With all that we have given them, we should own, perhaps, at least one half of this asset." Here's the problem with that claim. Documented by CNN's Fact Check, published the following morning. Confirmed by Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer's office. Confirmed by Windsor Mayor Drew Dilkins, confirmed by Republican former Michigan Governor Rick Snyder, and confirmed by the text of the 2012 agreement itself. Michigan already owns half under the 2012 agreement negotiated by Governor Snyder. A Republican Michigan receives 50% joint ownership of the completed bridge without contributing a single dollar of construction funding. Canada financed the entire project cost of approximately $64 billion Canadian dollars. Michigan's arrangement was precisely, Canada builds it, Canada recoups through tolls, and then Michigan collects 50% of net toll proceeds going forward. Snyder's response to Trump's post was published in the Detroit News and has since been widely quoted. He wrote, and this is a direct quote, "We do already," referring to the line about owning at least half of the asset. Canada and the state of Michigan are 50-50 as owners of the new bridge. Trump's post also claimed the bridge used only Canadian steel. That was also factually incorrect. Canadian officials, including Prime Minister Carney, stated publicly that both American and Canadian steel were used in construction. with the Michigan interchange side of the project employing American workers. In American materials, the White House issued a statement calling it unacceptable for Canada to own the bridge, fully a statement that was directly contradicted by multiple documented public sources. Within 24 hours of his release, a factual record on Trump's prior position regarding this bridge is documented and unambiguous, and it directly contradicts his February 2026 post in February 2017. Early in his first term, President Trump issued a joint statement with then Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. The statement read, in part, "We look forward to the expeditious completion of the Gordie Howe International Bridge. It will serve as a vital economic link between our two countries." ProPublica published this document verbatim. The bridge was also included on a list of 50 priority infrastructure projects developed at the beginning of Trump's first term for emergency and national security purposes in 2018, when the Moroun family, owners of the rival Ambassador Bridge, aired an advertisement on Fox and Friends specifically urging Trump to cancel the project. He did not cancel it. His Canadian ambassador attended the groundbreaking ceremony and lifted a ceremonial shovel in December 2019. Trump signed a federal spending bill that included $15 million in U.S. Customs funding, specifically allocated to the Gordie Howe Bridge project. This is documented in the Congressional Record, the bridge's ownership structure, financing model, and the 2012 Michigan-Canada agreement did not change between 2017 and 2026. What changed were trade tensions, Ontario's retaliatory ban on American alcohol, Canadian dairy protections, and Prime Minister Carney's preliminary trade agreement with China that reduced tariffs on Canadian canola. Former Conservative MP Jeff Watson summarized the contradiction directly to CNN. The absurdity is Trump 10 takes no issue with the arrangement, wants construction expedited, while Trump 20 now wants to use it as leverage in a trade war he started. To understand why Trump's February 9th post landed the way it did, you need to know what happened in the hours before it was published, and you need to follow the money according to reporting by the New York Times, CBC News, and the Detroit Metro Times. Matthew Moroun, chairman of the Detroit International Bridge Company, which owns the Ambassador Bridge, met personally with Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick on February 9, 2026 to lobby against the Gordie Howe Bridge. Hours after that meeting concluded, Trump published his Truth Social threat. CBC News reported that the Moroun Company had revived its working relationship with Ballard Partners, a top lobbying firm in Trump's Washington, with deep ties to his administration, and had spent at least $25 million US during Trump's first term on lobbying for transportation regulation and issues related to international bridges. In January 2026, the month before the Truth Social post, Matthew Moroun donated $1 million to MAGA, a pro-Trump super PAC. Campaign finance records compiled by the Detroit Metro Times show that Matthew Moroun also donated more than $605 to Trump's campaign in joint fundraising committees. Since 2019, the Moroun family's opposition to the Gordie Howe Bridge is not new. They spent more than $33 million in 2012, backing a statewide Michigan ballot initiative that would have required voter approval for any new international bridge construction, specifically to block the Gordie Howe project. Michigan voters rejected it 59 to 41%. The family then pursued multiple federal lawsuits, claiming exclusive rights to the Detroit Windsor crossing. Every lawsuit failed. The Supreme Court declined to hear their final appeal. Of economic motive is straightforward. The Ambassador Bridge has generated over $60 million annually in toll revenue from its near monopoly on commercial heavy truck traffic across the Detroit River. Every truck that uses the Gordie Howe Bridge is a truck that does not pay a toll to the Moroun family. Rick Snyder wrote explicitly in the Detroit News, there would be one big winner if the blockade succeeded, and it would not be Canada. The political response within Michigan was unusually unified across party lines, which matters because Michigan is a swing state that Trump carried in both 2016 and 2024, and where the bridge has been a bipartisan infrastructure priority. For over a decade, Democratic Senator Elisa Slotkin issued a statement saying the threat was awful, for our state's economy and warned of higher costs for Michigan businesses, less secure supply chains, and ultimately fewer jobs. She added, "The president is punishing Michiganders for a trade war he started." Democratic Senator Gary Peters called the statement completely backwards. Representative Debbie Dingell brushed the threat aside publicly and said she would attend the ribbon cutting. Governor Gretchen Whitmer, who has maintained an unusually cordial working relationship with Trump, including a public hug ahead of an Air National Guard announcement, allowed her press secretary, Stacey LaRouche, to issue a clear statement. The bridge supports jobs, strengthens the auto industry, and represents bipartisan cooperation financed by Canada and built by union workers from both countries. It's going to open one way or another, and the governor looks forward to attending the ribbon-cutting. Republican former Governor Rick Snyder went further, publishing a point-by-point rebuttal in the Detroit News, and concluding that using the bridge as leverage doesn't make the most sense, given your other tools, and that the bridge stoppage approach would primarily harm Americans, even Michigan. House Speaker Matt Hall, who initially attempted to defend Trump's posture, publicly acknowledged that the existing Ambassador Bridge is owned by an American family, and that those owners could themselves become targets of Canadian retaliation. The Moroun name had reached a press briefing. That is how thoroughly the lobbying connection had become embedded in the public narrative. Beneath the political theater is an economic case for this bridge that has been built on documented data for over a decade, and it is the economic case that makes the threat particularly self-defeating from an American standpoint. The Detroit Windsor corridor handles roughly a quarter of all merchandise trade between Canada and the United States. The North American auto industry is not simply assembled on one side of the border. Components cross multiple times. During production, an engine block may cross the river 3 or 4 times before a finished vehicle rolls off an assembly line. Even a single day of disruption at this crossing translates directly into halted production lines. The existing Ambassador Bridge connects to Windsor city streets before reaching highways, forcing commercial trucks through intersections, traffic signals, and urban congestion on the Canadian side. The Gordie Howe Bridge eliminates that entirely, with direct highway connections on both sides. Beyond efficiency, redundancy is the other critical factor. The Ambassador Bridge is the only truck-capable crossing at this location. The Detroit Windsor Tunnel has a clearance restriction that prohibits commercial vehicles. A single structural issue, mechanical failure, or protest blockade has occurred during the 2020 convoy demonstration can stop all heavy commercial traffic across this corridor with no alternative route. The Gordie Howe Bridge creates a second lane of redundancy blocking. It preserves a single point of failure at one of the busiest trade crossings in North America. The project's peak workforce reached 300 people during construction. Its community benefits plan allocated $20 million US for local improvements in Detroit's Delray neighborhood home improvement grants, pedestrian bridges, and job training programs. American workers build the Michigan interchange. American businesses will use the crossings. Approximately 6,000 Canadians are projected to cross daily for work in Detroit. Supporting the local service economy on the Michigan side, here is the current documented status. As of this week, the bridge's physically complete testing and commissioning are ongoing. On March 2nd, 2026, a Federal Register final rule formally established the Gordie Howe Bridge as a class of port of entry for the United States, meaning that legally it has been designated an official U.S. border crossing. The toll rate structure was announced in March 2026 by the Windsor-Detroit Bridge Authority, with rates confirmed as competitive with the Ambassador Bridge. Spring 2026 remains the official target opening window, as confirmed by Windsor-Detroit Bridge Authority spokesperson Heather Grondin at a public meeting on April 22, 2026. Trump's threat to block the opening has not resulted in any formal executive order, regulatory action, or documented legal mechanism to prevent the bridge from opening. The 2012 agreement remains in place. Michigan's 50% ownership stake is unchanged. The presidential permit issued in 2013 by the U.S. State Department remains valid. The federal DHS port of entry designation, effective March 2nd, 2026, represents the U.S. government's own formal recognition of the crossing as official. The key operational gating factor, confirmed by all parties, is staffing by U.S. Customs and Border Protection, which would need to be in place for the bridge. To begin processing traffic, what began as a social media post on a Monday night has, as of May 2026, produced no legal change to the bridge's status, no modification to the 2012 ownership agreement, and no halt to the commissioning process. The bridge is opening. The question is when and whether it opens. With the political goodwill that a project of this scale and documented by partisan history deserve a share. Is the global sketch bottom line, built entirely from verified sources published between February 9th and May 11th. Billion Canadian finance crossing that Michigan co-owns at zero construction cost. The U.S. endorsed it in 2013, funded it in 2019, and cheered its progress in 2017, the night before Trump threatened to block it. The owner of the rival private toll bridge met with the Commerce Secretary and donated $1 million to a pro-Trump PAC. The bridge is still opening. Michigan's bipartisan leadership, union workers, auto industry representatives, and a Republican former governor all said the same thing. Blocking it hurts Americans, not Canadians. The one party it would help is the one that spent $33 million into decades trying to stop it. Subscribe to Global Sketch right now for this kind of fact verified, source-cited analysis every week. Drop your view in the comments. Do you think Trump's bridge threat was about trade leverage or about protecting a political donor's monopoly? We want to see that debate. See you in the next one.